Hello, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's BCCJ webinar. I'm so excited about today's conversation. Briefly, a bit about myself. So, I'm a British lawyer based in Tokyo, and I'm also on the executive committee of the BCCJ, and I'm in the DE&I task force. And today, I'm absolutely delighted to present to you Dr. Ashley Dash and Keena Jackson. So, they're both nominees in last year's BCCJ British Business Awards. So first, if you'd like to kick us off, Dr. Ashley Dash, and just give us a brief introduction about yourself.
Hi, I am so excited to be here. I'm glad everyone is attending. My name is Dr. Ashley Dash, and I like to say that I landed my second dream job in Japan while working for Yamaha Motor Company. And I have a background in human resources, specifically in leadership development and operations and helping employees learn and grow in their careers. So I'm so excited to be a part of this conversation because I know it's much needed. I don't want to get too much into the details of everything, but I know this is a topic that for many people is spoken in hushed tones, right? In private conference rooms and in conversations with friends. So I just think it's very important to treat this as professional development, as personal development, as we prepare to delve into these interesting and wonderful topics that will benefit everyone.
Thanks ever so much, Dr. Ashley, and that's absolutely right. And part of the reason why we're doing this is because our theme for this year's BCCGA is brave conversations. And like you said, these conversations happen in the hush, but I think it's important for all of us as a community to get involved. So thank you very much. And Keena Jackson, would you like to give us a brief introduction, please?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Kina, and I'm originally from the Philadelphia area of the United States and a long-term resident of Osaka for 20 years now. I represent someone as a freelancer and independent contractor who maybe interacts with the workplace in a different way. So it's a slightly different perspective to approaching work hurt and overcoming things. I'm also on the planning team and one of the coordinators for Black women in Japan. And I'm very happy to join the talk today.
Thank you very much, Keena. So, Dr. Ashley, would you like to start your presentation, please? Thank you.
Definitely. I will share my screen and we will get started. So today's session, part of the session is Healing Work Hurt, 3 proven strategies to ditch doubt, rebuild confidence, and overcome overwhelm in the office. Okay. These are 3 things that I personally have experienced, as well as a number of my friends, colleagues. So let's dive into it. Just a couple of details about me, so you kind of understand my background. My work hurt began in 2007. Okay. I was an unemployed college graduate. Okay. I call myself a recession baby. So in the Great Recession of 2010, I graduated right as it was beginning, and had a really difficult time finding a position, and in experienced chronic unemployment, right? Which is basically being unemployed for more than 3 months. Eventually we got through the recession, found a position, and I graduated with my MBA and started my career in human resources, right? So before I kind of didn't understand the processes, didn't understand what HR was. And then in 2010 and since, I've seen the behind the scenes of how everything works in an organization, which is how I learned about how some of these processes, not just people, are creating work hurt. So we can get into that. I landed my first dream job at Mercedes-Benz, which I thought was amazing and really cool. I wrote a book about it called Finding Career Freedom. It was an Amazon bestseller. Then I landed my second dream job in Japan, working for Yamaha Motor Company. Again, amazing. And then during the Great Recession, I graduated with my doctorate in strategic leadership. So over the last 15 plus years, I've been in this space personally and professionally around work hurt. Okay. So let's move into what I call some startling statistics. Okay. I've worked, in Japan and in the United States, and there's really important things to know. And in the US, workplace stress, right, which is a part of work hurt, cost the US economy more than $500 billion. Okay. That is a lot of money. Okay. And when you look at the top 10 cities with the highest burnout around the world, Tokyo, Japan is number one, okay, according to Corporate Vision News. All right. And then Los Angeles, USA, where I also worked, is also in the top 10. So I've worked personally in two of the top 10 countries with the highest burnout. So when we talk about work hurt, I'm not only speaking from personal experience, but I want to apply the professional part that we can fix so we can address those things, right? Not just suffer from it, but how we can fix it going forward. Okay. Now, the first thing when we say work hurt, most people instinctively, even if they've never heard the phrase, they instinctively know what that means, right? They know what that is, right? Work hurt is seen in actions and behaviors first, okay? Not just people. A lot of times people think of like a particular person that hurt them at work. That is a part of it, but it's not the entire definition, okay? Behaviors in the economy, right? Like I said, I graduated in the Great Recession, right? There's recession talk as we speak. When different things happen in the economy, it affects jobs, it affects decisions and decision makers, okay? So the economy can be part of your work hurt, okay? If you work for a toxic work environment, right? And we talk about different cultures of organizations, right? And sometimes the environment is not the entire organization. Maybe it's just a department, right? Maybe it's just a part of the environment, right? So that is something that to know. When we talk about running from a bad manager, running from someone who maybe we don't gel well with, we don't work well with. Most of us know or have heard stories about having bad managers. That having those experiences can result in work hurt. Trusting with good intentions. I think a majority of people actually fall into this category. Okay. What that means is that you trusted someone with information, right? Trusted someone with a project, a process, some type of information on the thought that this person was trustworthy and that they were credible, right? And then this information was used against you, right, in some type of negative way, right? And I think this is where a majority of the people fall initially. Okay, work hurt does affect certain populations specifically. Sometimes women and people like myself, African Americans in general, other people of color, when we talk about microaggressions, right, and understanding what a microaggression is and how that feeds into work hurt. Negative coworkers is something that we also experience. And sometimes these conversations aren't direct dialogue. You might not have ever experienced a direct negative conversation to you or about you, but we call it, in passing, you hear kind of like the gossip mill, right? Or the water cooler conversations, right? When you hear the negative conversations, that also can contribute to work hurt. And then just inappropriate comments in general regarding family, religion, personal style, like it runs the gamut, okay? These are the causes of work hurt. And this is how typically we see the actions and behaviors, and we see them first, okay? But work hurt is not actions and behaviors, okay? Work hurt is actually beginning in the mind, right? It is our inner thoughts plus the fear, right? The fears that all of us as humans innately have, right? And work hurt often sounds like rehearsed things we've heard in our head, right? So a couple of things that you've heard in your head is, I don't deserve this because ... right? And you fill in the blank for yourself. Okay, I can't believe I allowed them to ... right? That could be, I can't believe I let them not promote me, look over me, right? Other things are, when I tried to do this before ... this happened, right? So I'm not going to try again. These are indications of work hurt in your mind. When you're looking to apply or maybe get promoted, I shouldn't apply because, okay? ... I really hate to use the word excuses because these aren't excuses, okay? These are internal thoughts that we hear running in our mind, whether we are conscious of them or not, okay? If you're highly educated, right, and you're a really hard worker and highly productive, the one that often hits us the most is, I should know better because, right? You're highly educated, you've taken all these certifications, you've been in your job for a decade or more, right? In your brain, I should know better, right? Anytime a should shows up, that should be an indicator that we are in the work hurt mode. Okay. If we ever say, I'll never do something because of something else, right? Dot, dot, dot. That is also a thought process resulting in work hurt, right? And this is one of my favorite. And I find that this happens to women. Okay. Not all women, but this is more specific to women. They are not listening to me. And that's why I had to dot, 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 right? Right. Okay. So out of all of these, something should resonate to you. Now, of course, this list is not inclusive of every thought, but these are the majority of the thoughts that we think. And oftentimes we never share this information with other people. We don't tell people this. We don't say this out loud, right? These are things that we deal with at night, right? Before we go to bed. These are things we see ourselves in the mirror. We have car conversations, right? These are things that you're thinking, but not necessarily sharing, which is why it's important to be on a platform like this, to know that you're not alone. You are not quote unquote crazy. I hate that phrase, right? That you are a normal functioning human being, right? Who's dealing with life, right? Professionally. And that's what this is. Okay. Now, the issue with work hurt is that because there are actions and behaviors, there's actually a chain of events. Okay. And the issue with work hurt is that we make a momentary thought, a belief system that we operate in about who we are. Okay. So we internalize a momentary thought, right? So instead of saying, you know what, I made a bad decision, because we all do, right? It was a lapse of judgment. It was an incorrect assumption, right? Those things happen because we're people. But instead of saying, I made a bad decision, we end up saying, I am a bad person, right? I am unprofessional, right? I am, messing up, right? This is not true. Because you made a bad decision does not make you a bad person. Okay. Just because you mess up one time does not affect your entire decades of professionalism in the workplace. Okay. These are moments and times. Okay. However, our brains are so powerful, right? They're so amazing, right? We act on the behavior, on the I am statement. So instead of saying, I made a bad decision, we say, I am a bad person, right? And our brain supports that. It brings all the reasons why we're a bad person. And it creates negative patterns of behavior and stories that we feed ourselves, right? So oftentimes people have heard a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Work hurt, if not caught and managed, can be a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Okay. And I want to go to just a little example of a chain, an inner thought that I've had. So this is my personal work hurt chain that I've worked through is I have to work hard to make money. Right. I learned that as a child. You have to work hard to make money. But many of the women in my family, they worked really, really hard. They worked in the military. They worked in manufacturing. They worked really hard. And I just felt like I didn't want to work hard like that to make money, right? But when I said that, it sounded like I was lazy. It sounded like I didn't want to work hard, but that wasn't the case. But that's the belief that my brain kind of latched onto. Okay, that's how it happened for me. And the behaviors and actions that showed up for me in the past have been self-sabotage, right? Procrastination, perfectionism, right? Having some control issues, not being able to trust coworkers, right? Trust bosses fully, right? And in stories that actually showed up for me, in the past, I have gotten fired, right? Not one of my shining achievements, but it happened, right? I've had difficulty with coworkers, right? I had bad bosses. Okay, these are things that can actually happen. However, because their behaviors and actions, right, you can grow and learn from that, right? So I haven't had these issues again once I was able to manage them, right? But I had to be honest about what they were and where they came from. Now, there's 3 strategies actually to dealing with work hurt. And the first step is to reflect, right? I often tell people to journal, do journaling exercises, right? Reflect on, where did that thought come from? Where did that story come from? Where did that memory come from? It started somewhere. Where's the first time I remember thinking this or hearing this or feeling this? Oftentimes that first step will get you to where you need to go moving forward. The next step is to be honest. Once you think of those thoughts, right? Sometimes not so happy feelings come up, but be honest about what really happened. And once you're honest about what really happened, ask yourself, are you sure? Are you sure that's actually how things happened? Or is that just your perception, your understanding? Were there other factors at play? And of course, once you really are honest and you have time to reflect, then it's time to make an action plan. How do I address these thoughts and behaviors? How do I make sure, right, that these types of things don't happen again, right? How do I identify these things before you move forward, right? And this is going to help with the doubt. This is going to help with the overwhelm. These are the answers to why sometimes your coworkers may trigger you and you don't know why, right? Maybe your boss isn't the greatest boss, but there's things that you could do, right? Or maybe your boss is an amazing boss, right? But you have factors at play that are prohibiting you from being the most productive employee in a positive way. Okay. I have some resources that I want to share, but I think I'll hold that off to the end. James, what do you think about that? I'll
Yeah, that
defer to you
sounds
on that.
great. I should also add anyone, if you've got any questions, if you press the Q&A button and field those to me, I can raise those ones. Thank you ever so much for that. Absolute gold dust. I've written quite a lot of notes as well, so we'll have a conversation between ourselves after that. But we'll move on to Keena now, and just if you could share your screen and show your slides. I think Sam might be doing that for you.
Yes, Sam, thank you. Okay, just a quick intro again. I'm a freelance translator and business consultant located in Osaka. I work a lot in the alternative food and vegan space, also with artists and small companies. As someone who enters for a short time, to help with projects. And keeping with the theme of today's talk, I'm often overwhelmed. So I'll share a little bit of some personal stories today. And I'm going to focus on the different identities that you can have throughout your work life and private life that kind of help you deal with work hurt. So next slide, please. Okay. So one thing I think that is really important is finding satisfaction outside of your 9 to 5. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what you identify with, cultivating your personal interests, and recognizing if you are an air quotes only person. Okay, thank you. Next slide, please. Okay. So when we step into the workplace, it comes with titles and roles and responsibilities. And you have to think about, who are you when you go to work? Are you a manager? Are you a support staff? What exactly are you doing in the workplace? And do you identify with that person? How do you see yourself in your work role? For some people, it's all of who they are. It's definitely a very important part of your life. And it's important to think about, do you have an identity outside of work as well? Does your work persona or your work identity impact your life outside of work or with your family? Sometimes it's easy to kind of get sucked in the day-to-day, and you lose a little bit of yourself that used to exist or existed outside of the workplace. So think if you're lucky to work in a job that's really fulfilling you and hitting all the areas, it might not be something, that you need to worry about. But for a lot of people, they do need to look for another place or another source to find something that they're passionate about. There are people that their jobs are very analytical. So maybe after work, they need to do something a little bit more creative. I also know some people working in software or doing something that's a very intangible, but maybe in their free time, they like to build things, just, get into something that tickles something a little bit different from what you normally do day to day. Okay, thank you. Next slide. And the next thing about the 9 to 5 is that a lot of times it's not really 9 to 5, especially in Japan. People tend to work longer hours. That might be the norm in your home country. There's peer pressure to kind of work all the time, work late, make yourself available on weekends. So you can see the guy kind of balancing all of those eggs in one basket. So if all of your satisfaction is coming from the workplace, it's very easy for when something goes wrong for it to take a toll on you. When children are in school, they're exposed to so many things in just 1 week, right? You have sciences, you have humanities, you have electives. There's a lot of things that break up your day. But when you become a working adult, if you're not careful, you just get stuck in a repetitive loop of being exposed to the same thing day in, day out with not much variation. That can chip away at you over time. You might have interests that you've abandoned that you used to love when you were younger, or something that you're interested in exploring more. So if all of your self-esteem is tied to work, it's really important to find things that improve your self-worth that are outside of the workday. So a personal interest is something that is not shopping, not sleeping, but actual, a skill or a hobby, and really encourage people to not abandon their interests just because their job seems demanding. Okay, next. All right. And the next point is about if you feel you're in only, or if you realize you're in only, and you can see the graphic there, there's like one person that's kind of standing out in the workplace. If there is a lack of diversity and you are a person that is filling that niche of diversity, that can bring another layer of added stress to you that you might not realize that you're experiencing. We all have pressures to perform in the workplace. If you feel you're the only person, for example, of your religion or of your gender, if you're in a homogenous team, everything doesn't always go smoothly. But it also be like Ashley mentioned earlier, it could also be a microaggression that you might not recognize at first. For a lot of us here, expats working in Japan, we're overseas in a new country, kind of working as an outsider, and we need to really enter the host culture where there might be some preconceived notions about who we are and where we're from. If you think about how people from other places are sometimes portrayed in the media, that can also be true for your coworkers that are not locals. Every area has, just certain things that they portray differently. So you could be working with people or just having experiences where someone's perception of you and who you are is a little bit different from who you feel you are. And if you're constantly cognizant of how you present yourself, it adds a little bit of pressure. And you might feel, or you might notice over time, that you do need a little bit of support in other areas. Okay, thanks. Next slide. And another thing to think about is how having a strong support network is attached to your well-being. So my mom always likes to say everyone needs their ABCs: acceptance, belonging, and community. And if you don't have those things, it's hard to feel fulfilled, even when you're trying really hard every day. So one thing that you can do is just spend some time with friends. They could be work friends. They could also be friends outside of your workplace. It can be, something that's planned in advance, like a birthday or a celebration, But I personally really enjoyed kind of the spur of the moment coffees or after work glasses of wine or walks in the park, with people. You can bounce ideas off of other people if you're going through a difficult time at work, or, just shoot the breeze and relax. The other thing that's important are, besides friends, are groups. There are cultural groups where you can practice your traditions or celebrations, religious groups, sports. Some people like going to the gym. There are professional organizations like this one, BCCJ, ACCJ, and FEW, where you can just kind of find another group of people to support you. And the third space is something that I think is really important. If we rewind again and think about school children, you have your identity and your life at home, your identity and your life at school. And many kids have a third space where they can kind of forge a different identity and be someone new, whether it's a sports team or going to, your church or your place of worship, or an art class. You always have, for many children, an opportunity to be around people who don't know you through school. And I think as an adult, that's important also. Find another space where you can kind of explore things, because everyone is multifaceted. We just maybe stop exploring it as we get older. And if you don't have anything, it says there, creative, right? Like you can make your own group. If you're crafty, find some people, knit together on Zoom, whatever floats your boat, you can make it happen. Just thinking about the group that Acha and I belong to, Black Women in Japan, was founded by two British women living here in Japan. They created the group because they didn't see anything like it that they needed to support their lifestyle here. But creating something helps lower your stress, add to the network around you, and really bring some joy. Thanks. Next. Okay. And next, when you do experience hurt and you're overwhelmed or you're doubting yourself, it's important to try to share a little bit of yourself authentically with others if you can, and also not be afraid to show your scars, which is really difficult. One of the most important things is to know what to look out for. Ashley mentioned ways that hurt can manifest, and there are also physical signs that you can might notice in yourself. I had a very stressful time at work a few years ago, and I started breaking out in hives, which I didn't attribute to work at all. I was changing my laundry detergent and, changing things, how I was cleaning things in my home, like cleaning products, which was great. It became more ecological, but it didn't, it didn't fix the physical problem that I was having, which later I found out was attributed to stress. So if you can check in with yourself and just find out if you're doing too much. A lot of people, women and men, focus on just surviving, getting through the day, making ends meet, not making waves, not bothering people, and that can take a physical and mental toll on you. The other thing is being able to sit in that discomfort. You don't need to ignore the fact that you do feel hurt, that you do feel overwhelmed, that you're a little bit irritated, with your coworkers. It's okay to not hide from those feelings, and just being able to sit in discomfort for a while. If you get to the point where you can admit those feelings to yourself, there's a picture someone's journaling. It's helpful to write it down if you don't want to share it with others. Writing it down is a good way to acknowledge the hurt that you feel and be able to move on from there. And after that, it's really healthy if you can learn how to ask for help or express that you're going through a challenging time. With social media, a lot of people post perfect snippets of their day. We don't often share kind of what's going wrong. And it's everyone's personal preference how they do that. If you're comfortable with using social media to do that, you can kind of share something that's challenging, not really to ask advice, but just to kind of get it off your chest or unburden yourself. It is important that you do that in a safe space, because if your vulnerability is received in a way that is not kind, you can end up drawing inward a little bit more and pulling away from people. So having support groups gives you a place where you can kind of share things that are not going wrong. And you can start with something small and insignificant. You know, in Japan, people ask, "Are you okay? Daijoubu?" And we just tend our pat responses, "Yeah, daijoubu," but maybe you're not okay, right? And it's all right to just have be a little bit honest about how you're feeling, and what you're doing. So basically, I feel we all get kind of stuck in a rut at times, and we're kind of programmed to just continue the hamster wheel of work. But being able to reclaim that piece of yourself that's a little bit vulnerable, acknowledging the hurt and making steps to move forward is a really courageous thing and difficult. But it's easier to do if you do have some support. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, Kina. Just as a reminder, if anyone's got questions in the audience, if you just like to pop that in the Q&A. Thank you ever so much. A lot of that resonated with me because I'm a coach as well, and a lot of the issues that you spoke about, I'm seeing a lot with my coachees. Can we just talk about the language that you both use, which is I find really fascinating because my first degree was in English language and literature. So Kina mentioned in your social media post where you advertised this event that we associate things like hurt and scars with relationships. When I read the blurb, came to mind things like warfare and physical violence. So, Dr. Ashley, what was the rationale behind using such powerful and emotive language?
Because we often, I'll say this way, I've learned, like in therapy, they often talk about big T and little t trauma, right? So T stands for trauma. And they also often classify these things as major, like warfare, right? Or small, right? As, you know, someone hurt my feelings. But we know science has shown that things that happen to us have physical manifestations, right? So I think it's important to understand and to properly place the experiences that millions of people are having across the globe in proper context. You do feel hurt, and it happens as a result of what's happening at work, right? And if we could just properly just frame it, then we can deal with it. Oftentimes, people that come to me, they don't have the words to articulate what's happening to them. It's a feeling, right? They have all these stories. There's not a way to encapsulate it. When I say heal work hurt, everyone comes to this table understanding, oh, I've experienced that. Oh, that's what that means. And when we have a common language, then we can start the conversation and dialogue to help, to heal, to move forward. So we're not stuck. So we can share, right? When Kina's talking about creating spaces to share, safe spaces to share works. I had a bad day at work. Oh, she's talking about work hurt, right? It's just instant. It makes it so simple and so easy. But I haven't seen a lot of this common language in the marketplace, which is why I thought it was so important.
God, it's the image I'm getting is it's to actually recognize that it is basically like a physical cut. It needs healing as opposed to just brushing it under the carpet. Kina, have you got anything else you'd like to add to that?
Just exactly what you said. When things need healing, if it's physical, you would give it attention. You would go to the doctor or a clinic. You might even talk to your friends and family about it. But if it's emotional, if it's a work-related trauma, you might not even realize that it's a trauma yourself. And you might really be hesitant to talk about it with people. For example, myself, I'm not someone that is a full-time employee at any company because I do consulting work. So sometimes when you work independently, you do feel like you don't have the same coworker support system And when things happen, you do need still people to talk to and bounce ideas off of. So it's important to feel comfortable to find someone or some place where you can take care of your scars. Yeah.
Thank you. And I'm glad you made that distinction between people working by themselves and other people in corporates as well, because I think that's quite forgotten about oftentimes. Keena, I love that graphic you had where you had the person with the eggs. Um, One of the common themes I keep hearing is I've literally got not enough hours in a day to do the things that I want, and they can't find time to do the things that they want to do. So, what would you advise for people like that, with the person with the eggs and they can't juggle it all at the same time?
I think journaling, like Ashley mentioned, having people write things down, and that was kind of how I started. I also feel kind of busy. I'm doing a lot of things. I'm pulled in a lot of different directions. But you can take 5 minutes in the morning or 5 minutes before you go to bed and just create a mental space to write things down. And when you can kind of get things out on paper, even if it's feelings or to-do list plans, it doesn't matter. It becomes kind of a meditative practice. And then you can kind of see, okay, I created this time. I created 5 minutes, and you can see how it's easy or easier to be able to create more time and spaces in your day for the things that you enjoy.
Thank you. Dr. Ashley Dash, how do you approach that kind of question?
So a couple of things. You have to make time, right, for things that are important. And healing, regardless of where it is important. And I often tell people and coach my clients and say that if you don't make time for it, life will make time for it, right? We don't want to wait until it's too late to address these things, until you have a breakdown at work, until something happens where it's something that is a bigger thing that we could address sooner, right? So you need to make time. And some of the things that Keena mentioned, like journaling, I am an advocate of journaling. I know everyone doesn't necessarily like it, but I often say it's free, right? It's one of the easiest things that you can do, right? And you could do that today. You could do that, like Tina said, 5 minutes, right? If you don't have 5 minutes to journal, then I say, the two things I recommend would be breathing exercises. Again, science backed. We know that breathing exercises, it lowers, blood pressure, right? It can help you. Just 3 deep breaths. I have a list of different breathing exercises. If people want access to that, I can share that information with folks. And also visualization. So I am an advocate that most people brush their teeth and most people shower. Okay, you're going to do one or the other. Okay. And while you're doing these things, you can do visualization exercises in the shower, right? As the water hits your body and it goes down, and goes down the drain, I'm releasing the stress of the day, right? I'm not going to let what happened yesterday affect me today, right? If you really don't have that much time, then you have to integrate it into your life, but you have to make the time to address it.
Thank you. I think as well, creating boundaries is really key, both in the workplace and in your private space as well. And I've found, especially managers, they're not very good at delegating because they're scared things might go wrong. So they're probably doing way too much instead of creating a boundary and saying, look, this is my time now, and I need to go home and do my own thing. So that might be another one as well. We've got some interesting questions in the Q&A. So the first one is, as leaders, how can we better recognize work hurt and support our team members in dealing with it? So Dr. Dash, I'll give that to you.
Yes. So a couple of different things you can do. The first thing is you need to know your team members. A lot of managers don't know their their employees are dealing with work hurt because they're not really that familiar with their employees. They don't really know how they are as people. So you have to kind of clue in and get to know your employees. No, Ashley's normally really happy. Like that's her general state of being. The last couple of days or weeks, right? She hasn't been happy. We're not saying that every day you have to scan, but generally people are the same, right? So when there's a material difference, it's noticeable for people who are experiencing long-term work hurt, okay? So knowing your employees is really, really big one. That's number one. Number two is checking in after there's been something that's been difficult in business, right? Your employee disappointed because they didn't get the job or they didn't get the project. Check in, right? That's just natural. It's good. Everyone would be upset or naturally be disappointed, even if you're not upset. Having a check-in, right? Most managers I know, they have check-ins for their projects, but they don't check in on the person when they have their one-on-one schedules, right? So that's the second thing I recommend. And the third thing I recommend is having conversations like this. So I offer, trainings to organizations to just bring it up. It's very difficult for managers to kind of have this, I call it touchy-feely conversation. It's not necessarily something that they're trained on. They're not necessarily comfortable, but bringing in someone like myself, talking to someone like Kina, right? And having these open conversations, we can help facilitate those conversations if it's needed in your organization. It doesn't have to be, just one person talking to one person. It can be like we're doing right now, having a panel, opening up the conversation so that everyone is aware.
Thank you very much. And we've got a kind of related question, but it's slightly different. I'll open this to Kina. So this is from one of our guests. We've got 3 years of COVID has exhausted the Japanese nation and sometimes closed the minds of people. There seems to be the tendency to focus on negatives, criticism, rather than taking ownership to change it to the positives at the workplace. What would you recommend in such cases to management and to employees? Both are in a way hurt and stressful, and it would be good to be able to address this as an organization.
That's a really good question. I'd like to piggyback it on what Dr. Ashley mentioned earlier about having an avenue for people to express this. I think in the workplace, it's kind of hard sometimes to talk with people directly about things. And if there is something negative going on that you want to see the positive side for, it might be a little bit uncomfortable to have these conversations face to face. So there might be a system or a process that you can put in place where people can feel free to express themselves, or have outside people come in. I was working somewhere a few years ago, and they did have outside talent come in and do presentations like this, or have some resources available from a third party that you make available to your employees so that they can learn how to turn these things around. So I think just being open to different ways to handle things is important in the workplace, and you can't rely on, well, we've never done this, or we've always done it like this, or something like that.
Thank you. So bring outsiders in. Dr. Ashley, another slightly related question here is there a right or wrong way to approach my seniors at work about the topic of overwhelm and burnout? It's a topic I don't feel comfortable bringing up, but it's frequently on my mind and affecting my ability to work. It's another fantastic question there.
Yes. So I have to be honest, we're in business. So there's often, good and bad ways, right? Professional and unprofessional ways to approach the topic. The first thing is to identify who you're going to speak to. That would be the first place I would start, and making sure the person you identified is someone you can have a safe conversation like this about, right? I am a numbers person. I like to say I'm part arts, part science is who I am in nature. So I like to bring the best of both worlds. I like to bring statistics, okay? About productivity. I talked about, stress, the level of stress in the world. Tokyo being the #1 place, right, in the world for burnout. These are topics and conversations that managers, they know they're being briefed on, right? This isn't new information to them, right? But going to them saying, hey, I'm struggling, just having the openness, the courage to be vulnerable. It's very difficult, but I'm struggling. What resources does the company have? Maybe your manager cannot help you one-on-one, right? But maybe they can point you to human resources. Do you have an employee assistance program, right? Do you have access to therapy, right? Is there something we can do, right? Most companies do have some type of mechanism, right, to support their employees when it's stress, right? Because it affects your health mentally, physically, right? Some people, they have nutrition, they have exercise, they have lots of things that are available, but we have to be bold and ask the question, right? If you don't feel comfortable, then I say scour your intranet, right? So most companies have an intranet. Get online and type in stress, type in, different words to see what pops up if you really don't feel comfortable approaching your manager. But I think just scheduling a one-on-one as a check-in would be a great place to start. Maybe you can start with, your business topics and objectives and move into, this was great, but it was really difficult for me to complete this. And this is why. What resources are available to support me to do better in the future?
Thanks.
And can I just add something there? In addition, when you are having this conversation, if you are aware of a resource already or you have a suggestion, that might be helpful to the managers as well, because they might be aware that there is a problem, but not sure of how to solve it. And that's stressful on management also, not knowing how to fix a problem. So I think if you have a little bit of courage to suggest something, they might be, willing to talk and make accommodations for that.
Thanks very much. Another question here is, what is the number one suggestion the speakers have for addressing imposter syndrome? I'm going to put this because we're in Black History Month in the States now. This is an issue I've seen quite in our community, people discussing quite openly as well. It's a very different thing for black and brown people having the imposter syndrome, because you've been promoted in this role, and then you think internally, like you're saying, Dr. Ashley, you've got this negative internal voice. I'm just the diversity quotient, and that's the only reason why. So we've got this added layer here. And would you like to answer that question and also think about it in the bigger context as well? I'll start with Dr. Ashley here.
Yeah, so imposter syndrome, I'm going to put in very casual, maybe not professional terms, right? But it sucks. Okay. Like that's basically what it does. And what I have had to learn for myself is that what I think isn't always necessarily true, right? I can say and feel unqualified, right? That's how I feel. That's imposter syndrome popping up. I also have a doctorate in strategic leadership in Black and white, right? There's a certificate that says that, right? So for myself, I have had to counteract my thoughts with Black and white. I've had to go back and say, you have 15 years of human resources experience. I've had to go back and read over my achievements, right? So I have a list, right, of things that sometimes when things, that doesn't go well, right? But I have a file I can go to. Ashley, you've done this and you've done that. And this person sent you a thank you note because you helped change their lives. I have a little brag book personally, right? I don't share this on social media. This isn't something that I advertise. This is for me. Okay. This is to help me get back to knowing that I am brilliant. I've taken my time to go to school and to go to work and to make a difference. And I have so much value to add and to help and serve people, right? So I like to make sure that I can remind myself that just because I think it doesn't mean it's true.
Thanks. So your solution is look at the data, not the inner voice. I love what you said there about having that book where you put all your credentials and all the positive feedback you've got. I think I might have to try that myself, actually. So thank you very much for that suggestion. Keena, have you got anything to add about imposter syndrome?
Yes, I love that brag book. Also, I'm going to start that. I think that's really amazing. For me, one of the things is having a support system of women and women of color that remind me who I am when I forget, because sometimes the imposter system just gets you, right? And I think we've mentioned before in Dr. Ashley's slides about your brain getting hold of a thought and you having to do what you can to get rid of that thought. I think that having a coach is fantastic. I do coaching. See a coach. You guys are coaches. I've coached people before. I think it's really important because it's ongoing work. So when your brain gets hold of a thought and latches onto it, your brain is a liar, right? And that's what my coach says. Your brain is lying to you. And you can't tell yourself one time to forget and that you forget. It's constant work and you're constantly learning. And it does take repetition, manifestation, affirmations. It's daily in order to get that stuff out.
Thank you. Dr. Ashley, you mentioned the laziness thing, which really resonated with me because I'm sure you've probably had this conversation growing up with your parents as well. You've got to work twice as hard just to get to the same level, and then you go in the workplace and you often find that you're working twice as hard. You've got double the qualifications, but you're actually achieving half in terms of promotions and things like that. So what would you say to someone who's just really disheartened because they're in that kind of space and they're just trying so hard to get to where they want to go to, but absolutely nothing's working? Like you said, they've got the book, they've got all the credentials there, everything's telling them they're great and they're a wonderful person, they're good at their job, but they're not seeing any results.
So I still, for most people, not all people, right? But for most people, it's a mindset, right? It still starts in the mind, and then your mind, like your body follows. I personally, I really do recommend, right, that people take action, right? Action actually shows you like what you can do, right? And I think it's so important to reframe. Right? I don't use the word lazy anymore. Okay. I am productive, right? I know the quickest and easiest way. I know how to hack, right? So hacks are really important, right? I'm the person that people come to for hacks, right? The lazy way of doing it is actually the most productive way of doing it, right? It just hasn't been shown or demonstrated before. So I think it's really important for people who have these negative thought patterns, right? Whether they were told to you, whether they were you were labeled that way, whether you were assigned them, like we all, sometimes they don't even come from us. Sometimes they come from others, right? Someone labels you and the label sticks, whether we want to or not. You have to reframe what that means and what that looks like, right? And someone calls me lazy now, it doesn't have a negative connotation for me. I just smile and say, yeah, right? It doesn't affect me because what they're basically saying is I can get things done really quickly, right? It doesn't take all of the effort that it takes other people for Dr. Ashley to get things done. Why would I be upset about that? Right. And that's what I talk about in interviews, right? When I'm having conversations, why should you hire me? You flip that laziness into a superpower, right? And you talk about it in a way that shows value and creates value for other people.
What about if you're in a situation where people don't recognize that superpower and you're not getting the promotions, whereas other people on your level are getting promoted? What should you
I
do? Should you remove yourself from that situation, go somewhere else, or just work hard at it?
I'm an advocate of moving on, of knowing when it's time to move forward. Many people are scared to leave. I've been labeled a job hopper, right? That's another negative connotation. Or am I a job hopper? Or do I have all these wonderful experiences, right? That could be of value to your organization, right? Because you're labeling me without asking questions, right? I'm a job hopper because the organization, they decided to change, right? Should I be penalized? Because I would have stayed if given the opportunity, but it wasn't my fault, right? So in those types of things, when people just don't understand you, people just don't get you, you don't feel accepted, you know, the otherness that Kina spoke to, right, was more of a lack of understanding and not just a feeling, right, of maybe a temporal situation, then I do encourage people to move forward in a powerful way, right? But plan for that, right? Just don't say I'm quitting, right? Don't leave. You know, I always encourage people to put a plan in place regarding those things. And again, I can share some resources before we jump off about different things that people can do in those types of situations.
Thanks. I think it also relates to the slide Keane had about creating spaces as well, because I've got some friends and colleagues. They create a world where they are in a superpower position because they've got a position of responsibility. So that's where they get their kicks, as opposed to being stuck in the corporate world and not going there as well. So that's another option, I think. We've got another question from one of our guests here. I often find it hard to make time to pursue my hobbies and passions outside of work. Do you have any suggestions for making this time? So I think it's coming back to something we touched on before, but Keenan, would you like to expand this a bit more just to give some practical steps what that person could do?
Sure. Sometimes it's hard to imagine yourself even spending time doing that if you feel too busy. So you might want to ease into it by, while you're commuting, maybe you want to watch some videos or something that's related to your hobby so that you can remind yourself how much you enjoy doing that thing, experiencing the joy for a little bit, and then just finding time where you can, longer than a video, actually partake in it. You can reach out and, like we talked about earlier, creating spaces or finding people that are interested in the thing that you are also interested in. There's tons of people with a similar hobby. If you can find them, it's easier to craft that time and do things together. But passions outside of work are definitely important. And I think creating the space and creating the time, if it's difficult alone with someone else, like accountability partner, is definitely easier to tackle.
Thanks. Dr. Ashley, have you got anything to add to that?
Yes, just one thing. When we talk about creating space, I don't want people to feel overwhelmed, right? In creating space. It doesn't have to be something you do every single day. During COVID, we created, my family, my friends, my network, we did virtual bingo across the world. So wherever you were, right? We tried to find the best, time that everyone could jump on. We would do Zoom. We did digital bingo cards. We found a system and we played bingo once a month, right? And everyone was excited. They cleared their calendar. We had, invites. We made it fun, right? So we found an hour or so in a month. I'm pretty sure we could all kind of find some time in a month. So if you can't find it daily or weekly, then spread it out to monthly.
Thanks. That's a great point there. Just baby steps for freeing out that time instead of rushing into something, trying to rehash your whole life. Final question, because I'm quite conscious of the time and everyone's schedules. Something that resonates with me, as you know, I do lots of things. So I'm a lawyer, artist, podcaster, DJ, music producer. And you mentioned authenticity, I think, kind of came up quite a lot there. So in my brain, I can't mix all of those worlds together. Like all the people I mix with, I can't get them in the same room because they're just different. Even the clothes I wear in each environment is very different. So it's almost like I've got split personalities. So what is my authentic self? What would you say to someone like me? How do I find my authentic self where I feel comfortable? Kina, would you like to do that?
Yeah, I think I'm a very similar person. So I would say all of those people collectively is your authentic self. It's very difficult for me to choose one facet of myself because I think I'm all of those things and they all resonate with me. And that's also okay. And I think we need to make space for people to realize that for some, that is okay. You are a DJ, you are a lawyer, you are an artist, and maybe 10 more things. And it's okay. It's okay to explore all of those things. Sometimes by not exploring those things, you could put more pressures on yourself. So I think give yourself grace and space to explore all of your facets. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we're running out of time. So I think Dr. Ashley, have you got anything to add really quickly to that point? And then I think you wanted to share some resources as well.
Oh, yes. For that, I would say acceptance, right? Just accept. I think we're taught that we're part of something, right? When you're a whole being, you're a whole human being, right? So just acceptance is the most important thing in that. And the resources I did want to share, really go into authenticity is really sitting with yourself, right? You can be authentic when you know yourself, right? So I'm going to share my screen quickly. I believe everyone can see. There's some resources on the screen for support. So we've broken it up into individual support. So if you need help with journaling, like we mentioned that Kina and I several times, we're both advocates, but you don't know where to start. There's a QR code, right? If you go to this QR code, you scan it on your screen, you'll get access to free journal prompts. Okay, so that's an option for you. For those of you who need more in-depth coaching around this, I do offer coaching sessions, but sometimes trying to talk to someone isn't what you want, right? It's too much, right? I have an e-course. If you go to healworkhurt.com, it'll be available in March. You can go through this by yourself, right? I'll take you through the steps by yourself, right? Or you can do this on your own time. You can watch it whenever you fit the time in, so you can start the process to heal. Okay, if you don't want to actually have a one-on-one session. And of course, for business support, there's lots of managers and leaders on the line, I believe. If you need help with your employee, if you're a part of an employee resource group, if you need to bring this conversation to your organization and you're not sure how, if you go to healworkhurt.com, at the very top, it says if you're a business, right? If you click that link and you fill out the information, someone from myself or my team will get back to you and we can discuss how we can come into your organization to help you have these courageous and brave conversations.
Thank you very much. And what a great way to end today's fantastic conversation. For the BCCJ members out there, we'll do a write-up of today's events and put your contact details as well if people want to reach out. So thank you ever so much. And thanks everyone on the line for joining. Have a great day.